A king was never supposed to kneel here, not in the dark, not in secret, not like this. He had heard God before, clear, direct, unmistakable. But now, nothing, no dream, no prophet, no voice from heaven, just silence. And silence has a way of changing a man faster than any enemy ever could. Because when answers stop coming, certainty begins to crack. He still had the crown, still had the army, still had the title everyone feared, but none of it could give him what he needed most, direction. So he did something no one saw coming, something he himself had once forbidden. He turned to what he had tried to destroy. Find me someone who can speak to the dead. And just like that, the line between faith and desperation was crossed. Stay with this, because this is not just a story about a king. It's about what happens when a man who once walked with God decides he can't wait any longer. To understand where he ended up, you have to understand where he started. Because Saul didn't begin as someone who chased shadows. He began as something rare. He was chosen. Tall, striking, set apart. The kind of man people turned to look at when he walked through a crowd. And more than that, God chose him, not the people, not the council, not the priests, God. When Samuel poured the oil over his head, something changed in him. He prophesied, he led his fought. His first battle as king, the Ammonites threatened to humiliate Israel, and Saul moved. Fast, decisive, spirit-filled. People who doubted him before went silent. This was their king, and for a season, it looked like the beginning of something great. But here is what no one tells you about people who get that kind of start. The higher the anointing, the more precise the obedience required. Because Saul had been given not just a crown, but a covenant. And covenants have conditions. The first time Samuel came to him with a direct word from God, wait for me. Don't move until I get there. Do not offer the sacrifice yourself. It was clear. It was simple. But Saul looked at his army scattering. He looked at the enemy approaching. He looked at the silence, and he couldn't hold it. He moved before Samuel arrived, before the word was fulfilled. And when Samuel finally got there, he didn't find a king waiting in faith. He found a king already mid-justification. The people were leaving. The enemy was close. I had no choice. And Samuel looked at him and said the words that should have broken him open right then. You have done foolishly. You have not kept what the Lord commanded you. Your kingdom will not continue. But here is the thing about a man who is skilled at justifying himself. He hears the words. He just doesn't let them land. Because the first warning is never the end. It's the beginning of a pattern. And what happens next is what most people never talk about. Time passed. More battles, more victories. And another word came. Destroy the Amalekites. Complete, complicated, not unclear. Complete obedience. But Saul fought the battle, kept the best sheep, kept the best cattle, came back to Samuel not in confession, but in celebration. I have performed the commandment of the Lord. And Samuel heard the bleating of sheep in the background. That's the detail that stays with you. Not the act, but the confidence, the willingness to stand before a prophet and call partial obedience total obedience. And Samuel said something that cuts through centuries. Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice. Not by a little, not as a technicality, fundamentally. And then the next words. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. This time, something cracked in Saul, but it wasn't repentance, it was image management. I have sinned. But honor me before the elders, don't let them see. Even in confession, he was thinking about his reputation. And that is how you know a man hasn't really changed. Bothers him most isn't the breach with God, but the audience watching. After that day, Samuel never came to Saul again. He mourned for him, but he never went back. And the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, gone. Let that sit. Not a weakening, not a distance, a departure, and in its place, something else arrived, a distressing spirit, tormentness that came and went, but always returned. And the only thing that brought relief was music. David's music, the same David who would eventually replace him. Isn't that something? The comfort he needed was in the hands of the one who would take everything he had. Years go by. The relationship between Saul and David turns from mentorship to pursuit, spends more time hunting the future king than building the current kingdom, and eventually Samuel dies, and Saul stands alone, no prophet in his God, no Kama, and the enemy return. The Philistines gathered their armies, not a raid, a war, and Saul looked at their camp and felt something he hadn't felt since his earliest days as king. Pure fear. He prayed, but heaven didn't answer. Not in dreams, not through the priests, not through the Urim. Nothing. And the silence was worse than any spear pointed at him. Because Saul had known what it felt like to have access to God. He knew the difference between heaven's silence and heaven's absence. And he couldn't tell which one that was, so he made his decision, not quickly, not carelessly. He had been sitting with it, and the resolve had hardened. He told his servants, "Find me a woman who is a medium." Notice that. He doesn't go searching himself, he sends servants. There is still enough of his old self left to be ashamed. He can't walk into this in public. He can't do it as a king. So, he takes off his royal robes, puts on plain clothes, goes at night, Endor, a town behind enemy lines. Think about the risk. A king, sneaking through Philistine territory in disguise, to reach a woman who speaks to the dead. He could have been captured that night before the battle even started, but desperation doesn't calculate risk. It just moves, and the woman he finds, she is afraid from the first moment, because the king had ordered people like her to be removed, expelled, eliminated. So when a stranger arrives and says, "Bring up the dead for me," she hesitates. "Are you trying to trap me? Don't you know what the king has ordered?" And Saul swears to her, "As the Lord lives, no harm will come to you." He invokes the name of God in order to pursue what God forbids. It is the depth of where he has gone. She begins the ritual. And what happens next is what theologians have argued about for centuries, because something appears, something she did not expect. She starts, and then she cries out, not in control, not performing, genuinely terrified. "Why did you deceive me? You are Saul." Whatever she sees has exposed him. Thing appearing before her is not what she expected to summon, because there's a difference between what a medium controls and what God permits. She describes what she sees, an old man, covered with a robe, and Saul knows. He bows his face to the ground before a word is spoken. Samuel, not an impersonation, not a demon wearing his face. The text doesn't soften it, and the first words are not comfort. "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" There's something devastating in that. Even in death, Samuel is being pulled into Saul's problems. And Saul answers honestly, maybe for the first time in years, "I am deeply distressed. The Philistines are attacking. God has turned away. He no longer answers me. So, I called for you." That is the truth finally spoken. Strategy, not image management. Just a broken man admitting he has nowhere left to go. And Samuel answers, not gently. "Why do you ask me, since the Lord has turned away from you and has become your enemy? Not a stranger, your enemy. The God who once anointed you now stands opposed to you." And then the full weight drops. "The Lord has torn the kingdom from your hand and given it to your neighbor, to David done." Past tense, not will be, has been already settled. And then, moreover, the Lord will also give Israel with you into the hand of the Philistines. And tomorrow, you and your sons will be with me tomorrow, not eventually, not someday. Tomorrow, everything inside him fails at once, falls full length on the ground, not bowing, collapsed, strength gone, fear gone. Everything gone, because it's a specific kind of devastation that only comes when certainty arrives. This was no longer worst case, it was fixed. And the woman, the same woman he had come to use, looks at the man on her floor and does something unexpected. She comes to him. She sits beside him. I listened to you. I put my life in my hands and did what you asked. Now, please listen to me. And she feeds him, bakes bread, kills a calf, sets a meal before the king who will be dead by morning. There is something in that detail that language barely holds, because grace doesn't always come from the places you expect. Sometimes the person who has no reason to show you kindness shows it anyway, and Saul eats. He rises and walks back into the night, toward the battle he knows he won't survive. That is how it ended for Saul, not with a dramatic last stand of faith, not with a final prayer of return, with a man who once heard God clearly, choosing over and over a path that led further and further from that voice, and until the distance became permanent. And here is what I need you to sit with, because this isn't just ancient history. Saul did not fall in one moment. He drifted. The first compromise was small. The second was reasoned. The third was desperate. By the time he was sneaking through the dark to ask the dead what God wouldn't tell him, he couldn't even see how far he'd come. That's the danger, not the dramatic rebellion, not the public fall, the quiet drift, the conviction that slowly softens, the prayer that slowly shortens, the voice of God that slowly gets filtered through what you already want to hear. One day, there's silence, and instead of sitting in that silence, instead of letting it break something opened in you that needed breaking, you reach for the forbidden, for the easier answer, for the voice that won't challenge you. Hear this. Silence from God is not the same as absence. Sometimes the silence is the invitation to stop performing, to stop managing, controlling the outcome, and actually surrender to the one who holds it. Saul never learned that. The silence terrified him because his relationship with God had always been about what he could get from God, not who God was. And when the getting stopped, there was nothing left to stand on. So ask yourself this: is your faith built on the voice or on what the voice gives you? Because one of those will hold you when the silence comes, and the other won't. If something in this opened you, don't just move on to the next thing. Sit with it. Because there is more in these stories than most people ever take the time to find. And next time, we're going somewhere even deeper than this.